So thanks for joining. Thanks for sparing a bit of time in your morning. This morning we're going to be looking at how to run quality improvement across an integrated care system, and specifically how we can use some of the tools and functionality within Life QI to help you to do that. So obviously the integrated care systems offer a kind of new way to work together, or relatively new way at least, and in one of those elements is improving quality, and working on quality across all the organisations involved in the ICS. And we've been hearing from a lot of our customers, particularly NHS trusts, who are looking to do a lot of that work, and really sort of bring in their counterpart trusts and other organisations that they're working with in the ICS, and using Life QI as a basis to do that. So we thought probably a good time to share some of our ideas about how that can be done, and how that can be achieved successfully using Life QI. So what we'd like to do is sort of ask you as the audience to, if you're happy to do so, introduce yourself using the chat, maybe introduce where you're from, and also be really great to learn a little bit about your QI and your ICS. So if you've got any information you're willing to share about sort of the state of QI, you're just getting started, have you got things established, have you got projects running, like anything you'd like to share with the community, that'd be really useful for everybody else as well. So please feel free to do that whilst we're going through the webinar today. Okay, so we're going to use as a basis for this webinar this 6-step plan that we put together. This is part of an ebook that we've provided. Some of you may have already downloaded it and been familiar with it. If you haven't, we will provide the link for that, so that you can go and download that ebook following the webinar as well. So we have a 6-step plan for running QI across an ICS, and we're basically going to move through these different steps and look at how Life QI can support that, each of those elements. So we're going to look first at engaging QI stakeholders and what we can do in Life QI to sort of facilitate some of that. We're then going to look at setting improvement priorities, move on to talking about a common approach to improvement, and how that can be delivered. Then how we run projects and programs of work, obviously pretty important element there. So we'll have a look at some of that functionality within the system itself. And then really important here is how to track your progress across all your projects, measure the impact that you're having, and then ultimately how you then go about sharing and celebrating that success across the group for maximum effect, really. So we'll refer back to this slide probably a couple of times during the demo, but for the most part we'll be looking in the system, which is where we'll go now. Okay, so let's get started then and talk about engaging QI stakeholders. So obviously important thing to do at the start of your QI, if you are at the start of that journey, is really to understand who's involved in quality improvement from across the different organisations in the ICS. To be able to identify those individuals, understand what's important to them and their organisations. Also, as I'm sure you're aware, like the ICS setup means that you have very wide-ranging types of organisations, different capabilities, different abilities within QI, among other things. So important to understand that, so that you can work together in the most effective way. So in terms of using Life QI, what we've seen people doing is basically creating a group within Life QI to house the projects, the ideas, the discussions among that core group of stakeholders within QI across the ICS. So you may already be familiar with the groups area in Life QI. So you can come into the groups area here, you can create a new group, we've created one here for our Bay Area ICS improvement group. So within here, we have all of the stakeholders listed here. So these are the people, key people involved, and also their organizations here. So this is like the home really for the QI activity and discussion of this core group. So you can see within the group, we have projects listed here. So it's an easy way to access the projects. And you also have discussions. So we've got one discussion going here amongst the group that you can access here. And there's also the ability to share files within this space. So if you're working across multiple organizations, you might not always have access to shared folders. So you can use this as a space where you can share any documents that you need to across the team. So that provides a nice central home for the activity. We've also got in here, as we move to the next phase, which is around setting priorities. You can see some priorities listed within this group, which we've got here. But this is where it's really important, obviously, to understand the other organizations and what's important to them, and sort of come to a common agreement on what those priorities are going to be, what you're going to work on across the care system. These can then be set up within Life QI. You can see these priorities set here on the group. So we've got 4 for this ICS. And then what you can do through the course of running your work is you can link any projects to their corresponding priorities. It means that when you come to report on those, you can obviously see how you're progressing along each of those priority areas. And we'll have a look at that in some projects and on some dashboards in a moment. Something else you could also do with the groups area when looking at priorities is you might have separate groups for some of those priorities. So if you have a particular priority in terms of a particular piece of work that you're undertaking. So here we've got a piece of work on sepsis. So this is another group within here, which is the Bay Area ICS sepsis workstream. So everyone involved with that piece of work, no matter their organization, they can come together in here and be that sort of home for their projects and any of their discussions within here. So that can be a useful element to help organize your work at multiple levels. Okay, so we'll have a look in a bit more detail at some projects and dashboards in a moment to sort of see how those priorities are shown within there and how you can link those. But really, what we're showing here is that groups can be a really effective way to manage your work, set your priorities, and ensure everyone's got a common understanding, common place to go to understand what's going on. So as we move forward, we're going to address the third point on the action plan. And we'll spend a little bit of time on here before we pause and see if there's any initial questions, and then move into the other 3 points as well. So the third point is around agreeing a common approach to QI. What we've found in the NHS, I'm sure you're familiar with, is that the model for improvement is probably the most common approach, most universal. Obviously, within an ICS, you're probably going to have organizations with slightly different approaches, and obviously that's fine and that's completely natural. The model for improvement does provide a nice, simple approach that can be understood by virtually anyone within the ICS. So, some of those organizations that maybe have less experience in QI, they can really get up to speed with a very simple approach like this very, very quickly. And obviously that approach, if you're familiar, asks 3 core questions and then instigates tests of change using the plan, do, study, act cycles. So a nice, simple way for people to understand the process and a common way to do that. So that's kind of what we sort of suggest within Life QI. Obviously, you can adapt that approach slightly to meet the needs of the organisations within your ICS. But the important thing really is to choose an approach that enables everyone who needs to be involved in QI, and obviously to not make it intimidating for them to get involved. As part of that approach, also think about infrastructure. So obviously we're here today talking about Life QI, so that's a great bit of infrastructure that you can use as an approach to your quality improvement. You know, if you're already using it for work within your trust, then it's an obvious extension to do that and apply that elsewhere as well. It's also really readily used across the NHS, so lots of organisations already using it. So definitely worth within an ICS or finding out who else is using it and already, because there may be stuff you can get started on straight away. It's also a fantastic tool for collaborating and sharing. So showing some of the groups areas here. There's also the ability, it provides the ability to share between organizations very readily. You can search projects, for example, from across other organizations to learn from and to collaborate on. So you can use the projects list here. You can use the search function up here and the filters that you find here to basically analyze that list, see what other work is going on, whether that's across the ICS or even projects from elsewhere that you can learn from within the system. Okay, so that's kind of addressed a few of the points. I just want to take a couple of minutes and pause, and I'm going to ask Erica if there's been any questions that you'd like me to answer on the chat.
Perfect, thank you, Andrew. We had an issue at the beginning regarding some access to the chat, but that has been resolved, so thank you for raising that. But everyone has been coming in with who they are, where they're working, and how they're looking to move forward, which has been fantastic. No particular questions on the initial system. Actually, pause that. We have one question just come in from Lisa, is who would host the Life QI platform? So in terms of probably an ICS approach to that, kind of one single organisation in terms of hosting that. If you could maybe take a look at that question.
Yeah, so there doesn't necessarily have to be one organisation that's hosting it. You know, if there's already a number of organisations using Life QI, then they can collaborate in the system. They can share they can maybe provide some licenses to some of the other users within the system as well if they want to. So it doesn't have to be an approach where one organisation purchases essentially all licenses for everybody else. It can be very much a organisation by organisation approach. It doesn't change the way you work together within the system, and I think that's the important thing there. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. Any other?
No, that's it at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Lovely. So next we're going to move on to look at projects and programs. So a lot of you might be familiar already with some of the project space and perhaps the programs area as well. So we're not going to go into too much detail today on those, but we will have a look through those and sort of point out some key features for working across a care system. So hopefully many of you are familiar with the projects area. So this is what we've just been looking at. We've got our list of projects here. And what I want to show you is an example project within here and how a team can come together to use this as their virtual home for their work. So you can see a populated project here. We have different tabs on the top. These are different pieces of this project. So you can see some familiar things in here like key driver diagram, measures, PDSA cycles, and so on. It's quite a simple layout, so anyone who needs to be involved can sort of come in and understand the approach and get to grips with that quite quickly. We've then got the summary pane below. So this is a sort of summary of this project in particular. You can see how many charts there are and how many PDSAs, etc., have been run. Then we've got the project membership as well. So just like on the group, this is the chance to get everyone together who's working on this particular project. So they might all be from one organization, or it might be spread across different organizations. They can all come together here, and you can invite new members into this space to come and collaborate on this particular piece of work. You can also use this space to link to your groups. So you can see if I want to link this to the ICS group, you can either do this when you set up a project, or as I'm doing here, you can come and add that subsequently. So this will mean it will appear in the list of projects within the group. So you'll see it, that group view that we looked at earlier, you'll see the project listed there as well. So there we go, we've just added the group. Something else we looked at within the group was setting priorities. So you've got your key priorities for the ICS. You can see your priorities at the bottom of the page here. So this project already has a couple of linked priorities. Again, you can do this when you set up a project, or if you want to come in subsequently and ensure these are linked, you can come and do that here. So come in here, select the relevant priority in the list, and then you can see it appears within your priority list. So that'll mean you'll see that on any reporting. If you were to run a report on or a dashboard on your this priority within your ICS, you could see the list of your projects and how much progress they've been making within there. So I think that's a really useful piece of project categorization and sort of organization. Something else that's also worth mentioning is tags. So I don't know how many of you are already using the tags feature, but this is a really nice flexible way to categorize projects and group projects. You can see this project, we've got a tag, ICS places. So this is sort of using the 3-tiered system, the NHS England sort of suggested 3-tiered system for ICS. So you have like systems, neighborhoods, places. So this would be a way of tagging your different projects essentially with their scale across the system. So here we've got a ICS places type project. Others might be more widespread across the whole system, for example. So you can use those tags. They're quite flexible, but just another useful tool to enable you to categorize those. And then you can run dashboards and reports off those tags as well. So another useful tool for you within the project space. So in terms of the project, so like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail about all the different elements of a project itself, but hopefully you can see how people can come together into the single workspace. They don't have to use all the tools that are available in here necessarily, but there's really simple things like doing some measurement. So there's a really nice measurement tool within here, which virtually anyone can use. So setting up new measures using simple charts like a run chart, and basically enables you to enter your data and see the representation of that and get a basic interpretation of your data as well. So we really sort of encourage that, where you do have quantitative measurement going on, to be able to record that within here. Really kind of easy to use and very collaborative way to do that measurement piece. And then obviously the PDSAs as well is a really core bit of functionality here. And again, simplicity I think is probably key here. And within Life QI, it provides a nice simple format for delivering or testing change, sorry. So we've got different changes, different PDSAs. Some of those have different cycles of that change. But essentially, we have a really nice simple format to come and document that. So virtually anyone could come and be involved with this, sort of thinking about what they're going to change, making a plan for that, making a prediction, and then thinking about what happened and how it compared to what they predicted, what they're going to do next. So simple elements like that can be used by anyone, I think, are going to be really important in the sort of ICS-wide improvement work that's going on. Okay, so that's kind of a little glance into projects, but I think what's also worth mentioning is programs. So some of you may be familiar with this. It's generally a little bit less used than the projects area, so hopefully new to a few of you. But programs is where you can run bigger pieces of work. So a program is made up of multiple projects. You can see this program in particular, we're just looking at an example now, is made up of a number of different projects we can see listed in here. So we've got 5 projects in total, 3 of those have been initiated, and 1 of those is currently active in this view. So you can see those particular projects in here. So we've got the 3 active projects listed here. So the way this is normally used is you would have a common aim amongst the program. So that would be sort of listed here. What's the common goal that you're working towards? But then each organization, perhaps, or each team can run their own project on that, where they might be testing slightly different things depending on their particular service that they're delivering within the system. So they might be changing different things, but ultimately working towards that common goal and common aim. And the great thing about this space is any of those projects that are going on, the data that they're collating and collecting can be fed into the program, come into the measures area. You can see we've got a few measures that are being collated across this program. Click on one of those and show you what that looks like. So here you can see for this measure, we're collecting data from the 3 different projects. That's what you're seeing here. So each of those charts, just click on an example, you can see the data for that particular site, that particular team. So that's what you're seeing there. But then what the system is also doing is collating the data from across those and aggregating that below. So you can see a system-wide view of that data set, and it pulls through the information from the individual teams as well about the changes that were implemented at what times, by what teams, and any notes that have been left as well by the team, which is obviously an important thing to pull through onto the charts. And then the pink at the top, if you're not familiar with that, that's highlighting any special cause variation within the dataset. So just really nice, simple way to understand where you've got real statistical change in your data, both on the local level, but also here in this example, looking at the wider view across the system. So yeah, programs, really, this is where you can house those bigger pieces of work. And I think we're going to see a lot of those going on across ICS activity, where you're sort of breaking it down into smaller chunks of projects, but then obviously collating information and activity upwards as well. So yeah, if you are interested in using that space, please go and have a go. There's lots of guidance on our help center as well, or speak to your success manager and they can help you with that as well. Okay. Before we move on to the final couple of points, I'll just pause again and ask Erica if there's any questions.
Thank you. We've had lots of activity in the chat. It's been quite good, but I've covered most of them, Andrew, but I guess there's one from Kuldeep from Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust, which has raised a good point. They're new to the group's feature in Life QI and find sharing between organisations on Life QI can be quite limited due to the permissions. And I've explained that by default, it will be members only can view, but if they were wanting to create a group across the ICS, they could then add the organisations that they wanted to that specific group. So they've got that single space to house the information to share and collaborate. So yeah, I just wanted to point out the permissions on that, which Andrew can show you now in a bit more detail. But no, that's it. Thank you. All good.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I suppose just to sort of show you what Erica's just explained there. If within an ICS group you have, obviously you've got your individuals as members, what we'd also suggest is get the organisations as perhaps as members as well. Then people would be able to share that information much more readily within there. So you can see there's 3 organisations within here. Okay, excellent. So now we're going to, in fact, just go back to our 6 steps. So we've just had a look at projects and programs, and how to run those. So we're sort of moving on to the final 2 steps here. So I'm going to spend a bit of time now looking at tracking progress and impact across the ICS. And then we'll move on to the final point on sharing and celebrating that. Okay, so tracking progress, obviously all this great work going on, it's important to understand how that is progressing and really what tangible results you're demonstrating. So one of the first things we always like to recommend is use the charting tool. So I've shown you that on a program, really simple, easy to use way if you've got quantitative data to understand that and make an interpretation of that. So using that within projects or even within a program setting, like I just showed, is obviously a really sort of valid way to understand the actual levels of improvement that are being demonstrated. So that's kind of on a measures level. What you're also probably looking to understand is kind of the more like the project progress and how projects are moving through their life cycle. To do that, if I go back to a project, we have this really useful project progress score, which you can see here. If you may already be using this, you'll notice when you start a project within Life QI, it starts at a 0.5 up here, and there's a 10-point score moving up to a 5.0. It starts, the first few stages are more about project activity, but then it does move into quantifying some of the improvement that's actually being demonstrated within the project. So yeah, really useful score. It's the IHI's project progress score that's baked in here and embedded as a standard. So I'd encourage you to use this, encourage your teams to use this to really, it's the principal way of tracking project progress within the system. As you can see, it's really easy to come in here and just read the definitions and understand where those projects are at. It's also really important when it comes to reporting. If these are kept up to date, then you're going to get accurate reports on your projects and their progress and their success across the ICS. Which leads us nicely into reporting. So the first thing you can do there's 2 types of reporting really. So you've got static reporting. So this is where you can run reports on projects, or you can run reports on lists of projects. And then the other type of reporting is a dashboard style reporting. So I'll have a look at each of those very, very briefly here. First thing you can use for the list is using the project list that you've got here. You can apply filters for this, for example, for your ICS group. If we can look at ICS improvement group. So these are all the projects running in here, which you can see listed here. If you wanted to run a report off on all your projects that are currently running, you can do that here. So click on reports and select the relevant template. You want to use the current list of projects that you filtered, and then you can run that report, and that's going to then export a list of those projects and key features of those that you can then go and save in the system, but you can also export those and use them elsewhere as well. So that's a really quick and easy way to kind of get a gauge of all your projects and how they're progressing. But maybe a slightly more dynamic way is using the dashboards within the system. So I'm just gonna open up one of those now. So we've got this example dashboard. These are found in the analytics area, and you can set these up and you can use the templates that already exist, or you can also customize those templates if you wish. So this is our Bay Area ICS precious ores improvement project dashboard. Oh, sorry, actually, I'm going to start on this one, which is the Bay Area ICS improvement overview dashboards. This is sort of across the whole ICS, the status of the improvement work that's going on. So we can see some key numbers in here, like the number of projects that are currently running, number of projects that have been completed. That's then being broken down into project progress. So yeah, you can see as we move up through here, we're showing sort of higher, more sustainable levels of improvement. And you can see the numbers here are hyperlinked as well. So you can go into the details of those if you wish. You can view that data over time, which is what you're seeing there. You can also see how your priorities are being serviced within the actual work that's being delivered. So you can see the 4 priorities that we've set for the ICS improvement in the ICS improvement group, and then the number of projects running related to each of those, which you can see here. You could break that down further and look at progress again, milestones within each of those priorities as well, if you wanted to go into an extra level of detail. And we can also see below that how the projects are aligning to the ICS tags that we've produced. So we've got our neighborhoods, places, systems tags, number of projects running related to each of those. Again, any of these numbers, click on those, go into the details to actually view those projects if you wish. And then below that, we've got a table on this dashboard, which is all the information about the projects that's being run, the projects that are being run across the ICS. You see those here. You can also see updates that have been left by the team within their projects. So you can not just get a view of the numbers and those sort of vital statistics, but also get some insight from the teams as well, if that's appropriate. Yes, and you can also apply these dashboards on different scales and to different pieces of work. So you might have a organization-wide, ICS-wide dashboard, but you might also want dashboards for, in this case, the precious ores projects within this ICS. So you can sort of break it down further, and using the different ways to categorize projects within the system that we've looked at, like groups and priorities and tags. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. So we've just got one more item to go through, and then we've got time to answer any questions at the end. So the final one is around sharing and celebrating success in QI across the ICS. And I think what's really important here is the sharing element. So being open as much as possible with your ICS colleagues about the improvement and enabling people to learn from that. So we looked at earlier our group and how you can open that up to share information amongst your ICS colleagues. So within here, get people into this space so that they can start to share work and view work from others. The membership that you see on the right here, you will see this is common through groups. You see the same thing on projects, you see the same thing on programs. You also have the same thing on dashboards. So that's the principal way to manage access and share information. So yeah, recommend sort of using that and getting the right people in there together as well. You'll also see when you're setting up projects, I think Erica mentioned this earlier, that the default is that only members can view, but you can also make that more open so that anyone can view. So yeah, you'll see that as a step when you're setting up a project. That's another really useful way to share information. Another point on sharing is, and something we hear about a lot, is people presenting work using LifeQI. So particularly, if you're talking through the progress of a project or a program of work, there's a really nice sort of standard way here that is easy to understand, that you can just walk through the different steps. So these tabs are more or less aligned to the different phases of a project. So you can obviously walk through those, sort of talk about, like your driver diagram in this case, talk through this, and everyone can obviously have access to the project as well, so they can come and view that and digest that in their own time as well. So we find that actually talking through the projects live is a really useful way to do that. It's also efficient because you can just pull it up and it's there. It's not like people have to prepare other presentations and such like to be able to enable them to do that. Yeah, so lots of stuff, ways of sharing and within the system, and hopefully getting lots of success in your projects that you can celebrate amongst them and celebrate within your groups through the discussions and such like. Okay, so just to recap then on the 6 steps. So we've talked through each of these steps now, from engaging QI stakeholders right through to sharing and celebrating your success in QI. As I said, this is from our ebook, it's a free ebook. We'll share the link so that you can download that if you're interested, and to sort of have this diagram and other information to hand as well. So yeah, a few minutes left, so time for a few questions if there are any, Erica.
We are good, Andrew. We have covered them all, and I have just popped quite a few different links, so apologies, into the chat, which anyone on the call can go and have a look at after today and hopefully get a bit more information about, firstly, what Life QI is for those new to Life QI that are on the call, but also some dedicated blog pages all about running an ICS within Life QI and the tools that we have to support that, which is everything that Andrew's gone over today. So no, Andrew, we are all up to date. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining, spending a bit of time with us today. If you have any questions, do feel free to get in touch using any of the usual channels. You can use our chat, you can talk to your success manager if you're already a customer, or you can email us, help@lifeqisystem.com. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you, and yeah, good luck with your QI across your ICS.